Hello everybody, I'm Don Counts and we are here in Fayetteville, Tennessee with Dick Farrar. Dick, let's tell everybody a little bit about yourself and then we'll talk about the group.
All right. Hello, Don. Dick Farrar was born in Fayetteville, Lincoln County in April 1940. Raised here, graduated from Robert E. Lee School, graduated from Central High School. Then following went off to Mississippi State University. It was Mississippi State College at the time, but second year I was there, it was changed to Mississippi State University. And then I worked for CFW Construction Company, which my father had an interest in, and worked for CFW for 23 years. And except for living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida with my wife and children for about 3 years in the 1970, 73, we've been residents of Fayetteville all our lives.
Let's tell everybody a little bit about something that we haven't done so far. Let's talk about this group. How did you come up with the name, or how did they come up with the name, and how often you meet? Let's talk a little bit about that to get started.
Well, actually, it really never had a name. We tried to tag it after Ronnie Carter, the Carter Group, but as things evolved, we just grew. I think our first meeting was following the funeral of Larry Taft's mother in April of 2015. Billy Joe Evans, Jimmy Ellis, Larry Taft, Ronnie Carter, and myself went to Coots for lunch, and we just sat and talked and enjoyed the company of one another. And at that time, I took a Clinic Bowl souvenir drink cup with me to the meeting. And I asked Ronnie Carter, I said, would you like to have this? And you would have thought I'd given Ronnie $1,000 because he cherished the cup. But the Clinic Bowl came up in the discussion, and it just more or less evolved from there. It was something that just getting a group together to talk and have fun, meet, eat, talk, have fun, and enjoy the company of one another.
How were the people picked that you've got on this group?
They weren't picked. It just, the following meeting, I think Ronnie and I invited Pat Welch and John Rickman from Tullahoma to join us at the Line of Grocery for lunch. And they came, and at that meeting, Pat mentioned that there were a couple of people from Tullahoma that might like to be involved, and John Olive was one, Kenny Pack was another, and so we just, down the road, each person would recommend someone that they felt would be a fit for the group. And as we've had 2 or 3 meetings to date from there, and everyone enjoyed the company of one another, and no one was jealous of one another, and we all had a story to tell of some kind. So everything just fell into place for the group.
It's a good group. It's a wide array of people, mostly involved in sports, but also when you think about referees and other areas as well, including wrestling and so many things.
Right. Pat Welch was a wrestling coach at BGA for a while. He's been a school board member at Tullahoma for years. John Rickman was a coach. Red Roberts eventually joined the group, and everybody in Lincoln County knows Red Roberts from the Franklin County days. And Dr. Heath joined the group. I'm gonna leave someone out, but as we talk along, I'll have their names come to mind.
All right, let's go back and start from the beginning. You talked about going to school here in Fayetteville. Talk a little bit about that, and then what led you into college and what led you where you went.
Okay, thank you. We graduated from Central High School, and when I was a freshman at Central High School, there was a fellow that was my freshman coach by the name of Kenneth Shipp. Coach Shipp resigned after my freshman year and went, I think he went to MTSU as an assistant coach. But Coach Shipp is probably the only, one of 2 coaches that we've had here that went on to coach professional ball, and he was an interim coach with the New York Jets, who was Joe Namath at the time was playing. The other coach was Marshall Taylor, who coached with the Shreveport Steamers for a period of time in the USF League. But anyway, in high school, my junior year, Coach Jim Barron was my coach for my junior and senior year. And Coach Barron came from the Wade Walker years at University of Oklahoma. Actually, Coach Barron was playing a junior college ball in Oklahoma after he got out of the service. And Coach Walker noticed him there, as did Darrell Royal. And Darrell Royal was a coach at Mississippi State for 1 year. And Jim Barron, he recruited Jim Barron to come to state. Well, Jim was from Lewisburg, Tennessee, and when he graduated, Lincoln County, Central High School, Coach Lindsey and Coach Mansfield were looking for a coach to take Rock Reed's place, who was my coach my sophomore year, excuse me. And so they hired Coach Barron from Lewisburg, actually, and Coach Brandon married, and Ruth was here. So it was Coach Barron with his Mississippi State connections that led me to Mississippi State. And I don't know how I thought I could play college ball at 170 pounds at Mississippi State. But anyway, Coach Barron took me down there one weekend and showed me the campus. And it was the only campus I visited. At the time, Mississippi State had 3,000 students, 300 girls, and the Mississippi State College for Women was in Columbus, 20 miles away, and that was where all the girls were. So I liked Mississippi State, stayed there, and then in the fall preseason, I went down and tried out for football.
What position did you try out for?
Well, wherever they needed me. I think my position at the time was a dummy holder to begin with, and we got indoctrinated very quickly. It was 2-a-day practices back then, and up in the morning at 5 o'clock on the practice field at 6:30 to 8:30, then breakfast and lunch. But the Mississippi State people have never really had a lot of money. I remember a gentleman from Tupelo, Mississippi, telling me that a Mississippian can live on $30,000 a heck of a lot cheaper than a New Yorker can live on $100,000. And it was about that way. But anyway, for example, there's a fellow a senior when I was a freshman by the name of Jim Poteet. Jim was from Lexington, Tennessee, and he was married, the only married student on the team. And Mississippi State wanted him so badly that they allowed him to bring his wife to school. Well, to tell you how things were with Jim Poteet at the time, he would go into the training table and get him a milk carton and go back after he ate and fill the milk carton with food and take it home to his wife. And that was her supper. And a lot of times he would do the same thing for breakfast. After practice, he'd go to breakfast and take a meal home to her. But Jim was later a coach in Lexington, Tennessee, and was on the TWS double board there for years, and quite a colorful candidate. Jim was, we called him Coon Dog because he had 3 or 4 coon dogs, and just about every night he'd go coon hunting.
Tell us about your experience of knowing Johnny Majors back in those days and how that came about.
John came to Mississippi State when I was a junior at there. Mickey Putman was a friend of mine that came to Mississippi State from Fayetteville, graduated from Central High School, and so Mickey and I roomed together for a year, and John came as a defensive backfield coach, and I asked John one day, I said, John, why in the world would you leave the University of Tennessee as a graduate assistant to come to a place like Mississippi State? He said, well, Dickie, I'll tell you. Said, at UT, as a graduate assistant, I was making $2,500, and Mississippi State offered me $5,000 a year. Said, does that answer your question? But anyway, John had bird dogs, and we were acquainted. And when he'd go on recruiting trips or when we had away games, he would ask me and Mickey to go over and take care of his bird dogs. And occasionally we would go over, and he and Mary Lynn would feed us a meal, and we'd talk about home. But John's father, Mr. Shirley Majors, Coach Shirley Majors, and my father used to hunt quail together quite a bit, either around Lynchburg or around Fayetteville or wherever they could find a quail. But they enjoyed the company of one another, and John would come over with his dad every now and then to hunt, and we were acquainted for a number of years. And really, when John passed away, I talked to him 3 nights before he passed away, and I asked John, I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm sitting here on my deck having a gin and tonic and rewriting my will. And 3 days later, John left us.
Wow. Did you stay in touch with him as he went on to Tennessee and played ball? And coached?
Yes. We were invited to Pittsburgh. John had invited Mickey and I to Pittsburgh. We never went to Pittsburgh, but Panthers played Louisville. And John invited us up for that weekend, and we stayed at the hotel, and he had us tickets. And I said, how do we get to the stadium? Where's the stadium? He said, you get in behind the team bus and just follow us. You'll be right there. So John took care of us. And the thing amazing about John Majors, he called one day and said, I want to come by and pick you up. I'll pick you up at the Best Western, and I want to drive around the area to the places where I played high school ball. So we went to Ardmore, we went to Pulaski, we went to Petersburg, we drove around for 6 or 7 hours. And the amazing thing about him, he could go to Petersburg and he could look over at the field and he could tell you what the score was when he was in high school playing on that field. His recall was absolutely phenomenal.
It's amazing about how sports in general give you that recall that you find within this group of as they tell stories and the details they remember of something that happened over 50 years ago. Right.
That's the group. You can go in and it's really we meet once a quarter at noon generally, and for a couple of hours, and the stories just get better and better. And you would think that when you start telling stories, they get exaggerated, but these are real stories that you just love to listen to. John Olive won a state championship at Tullahoma, I think, in 21. Of course, Lewis Thompson's in the group. He won a couple of state championships. And Red Roberts was an All-American little All-American at Austin Peay. Kenny Pack and his father, Bill Pack, and his brothers have, I think, 284 years of officiating in the Middle Tennessee area. So all of this group, except me, are Hall of Famers of some hall.
Let's talk a little bit about your career after you graduated Mississippi State, returned to Lincoln County High School. Let's talk about your involvement in the construction business.
Don, I wasn't a civil engineer. I didn't get an engineering degree, but I got a degree in management, the School of Business with a major in management. I had a professor there that I really liked, taught a lot of, Dr. John Darr. And Management 101 class, we met the first time, and there were about 175 students in the class. And Dr. Darr got up and made his little speech, about 10 minutes long, and he said, "Class dismissed." Well, that was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday classes. He came back on Wednesday, and out of that 175, the first Monday, first class, there were about 75 missing. And then he made his speech on Wednesday and came back on Friday. There were about another 175. And he said that day, he said, now I have a group of students that want to learn. I took 15 hours under Dr. Dar, and management is basically, it's organizing, planning, staffing, actuating, and controlling. And those things were drummed into us over and over and over. And I took 15 hours under him. In the last management class I had there, he made us write a term paper every week trying to solve a case in a manufacturing plant or something. But the term paper had to be, once a week, had to be typed. If there was a grammatical error and you had grammatical error and you had an A+ paper, it would knock you to a B. If it's a misspelled word and you had two mistakes, it would knock you to a C. So I finally found somebody in the English department could type my papers for me, and luckily I passed the course.
Let's talk about your construction business as you moved into working for CFW. Tell everybody what CFW it was and what you did there.
Okay. CFW began in 1949, 48, 49, with Mr. William R. Bill Carter and Mr. Betty Williams, who owned Williams Lumber Company, formed a building construction company called Carter Williams Construction Company. And Mr. Carter was and Mr. Carter and Mr. Williams began building houses in Radio City out off the Pulaski Highway. And Mr. Carter went to the city one day and said, when are you all going to start putting in the water and sewer for our subdivision? And Mr. Ed Payne, who was the city manager, or so-called city manager at the time, said, what do you mean you all? Said, that's your job. So my father and my mother and Bill Carter were first cousins, and my father knew Bill Carter very well, and they got together and formed Carter Farrar Construction Company, which was a utility construction company. Then I think in about 51, it became Carter Farrar Williams Construction Company, and then my dad and Mr. Carter bought Mr. Williams out, but the name remained CFW Construction Company. And I went to work after graduating from Mississippi State in Verona, Mississippi, in a little town right in Lee County, right next to Tupelo, and as superintendent on the job down there. And I worked for CFW until 1983. My first job actually was a water boy at the General Shoe Corporation back in 1949, 51, I believe, General Shoe was built. So I was an 11-year-old water boy out there, and so I guess I might say I started at the bottom. But eventually we formed a telephone division to put telephone cable underground for the Southern Bell, Southwest Bell, the Virginia. We worked in 21 states putting in telephone service for the Bell systems, and my job was to manage the telephone division.
What do you credit the success of CFW, and talk about how successful it became?
CFW, I believe in 78, was somewhere around the 65th largest construction company in the world. My father and Mr. Carter turned a $17,000 investment into about $90 million a year in the late 70s. Eventually, my book, The Rise and Fall of a Giant Construction Company, the federal people came in, I think, in the late 70s and began investigating bid rigging. That it started out in the Indiana, and the contractors up there said if you really want to find the big dogs, bid rigging big dogs, said go down to Tennessee. I understand that they went to Tillett Brothers in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and Tillett Brothers said if you want the kingpin, go down to Fayetteville and see Bill Carter. So when they came into CFW's offices and started filing through the file cabinets, they found paperwork, which was it was just a way of business back in those days, where bid rigging really helped a lot of small contractors get started in the areas around these small communities. But it was illegal, and CFW paid the price eventually. My father had left in '61. He had 2 heart attacks, and the doctors told him he needed to get off the road. Of course, construction, with utility construction, you travel, and CFW worked in something like 30 states over the years. And so Dad worked here. He swapped some CFW stock for Williams lumber stock, and he took over Williams Lumber, and he stayed there until the company closed in '97.
You've lived in Lincoln County a long time, and you've been involved in many different things. Tell everybody what made you get so involved in volunteering to make Fayetteville and Lincoln County a better place.
Not really. I don't really have a definitive answer for that, but there were people in the county, in the community, that really worked as volunteers while at the same time taking care of their business. Bill Crabtree with Union National Bank, my father-in-law, Chris Patrick with Union National Bank, Bill Carter, and the list goes on and on and on. Jim Malone. I saw these people volunteering their time, and then I began to wonder, when they step aside, who's going to take the reins? So I would attend the meetings where they were taking part, and just kind of learn from them and learn what needed to be done or what didn't need to be done, and focused on some of the things. And I will have to give Amana Refrigeration a lot of credit for moving forward in this community, especially with volunteerism. The people at Amana were always volunteers to golf tournaments or whatever it took, and really and truly generated a lot of what we see at the Lincoln County High School today.
Let's talk about your involvement with Lincoln County High School and the athletic boosters and the Falcon Club in general with the Gridiron Association. There's a lot of history there. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Dr. Tom Bullington was, I think, the Fayetteville quarterback president for years as Central High School folded into Lincoln County High School. And I remember there was one of the last meetings which Mr. Tom served. He brought Pat Dye here to speak to the Fayetteville Quarterback Club. And that was a very impressive evening, and I got to talking to Dr. Tom after the meeting. And he asked he said, Dick, would you take over the Fayetteville Quarterback Club? I said, Dr. Tom, I just don't know enough about it at the time. I'd rather you take it another year and let me learn. Well, there's things, really the Fayetteville Quarterback Club kind of folded, and it wasn't because of Dr. Tom's doing. It just, I think at the time maybe Central High School didn't have winning teams, and the enthusiasm kind of dwindled, and we formed the Falcon Club. I drew the bylaws and the Constitution for it, and I believe that was in 82 or 83. and I was the first president for the first 2 years. And then following that, one of the most harder working people I've ever been around, Martha and Bob Henry, really worked hard at the Falcon Club. And I think Martha took over maybe the third year and fourth year as president of Falcon Club. She's the one, I think, that really got it moving. And the Falcon Club lasted quite a few years. And we had some great speakers in here. I remember this was after the consolidation. One of the speakers we had in here was John Hanna, who is New England Patriot All-Pro and been called the greatest offensive guard of all time in pro football. Mr. John Hanna's father was the Purina farm dealer in Albertville, Alabama, and the Purina man here, I'll think of his name in a minute, should not forget that. But anyway, they were good friends, and he came to me one day and said, would you like to have John Hanna to come speak to the Lincoln County Falcon Club? And we were sponsoring the All Sports Banquet at the time, and John came and did a magnificent job. And those type things just kind of built the Falcon Club. Good speakers. Larry Munson was here at one time. I remember calling Lee Corso to come and speak to our group. And Coach Corso said, Dick, you can't afford me. And I said, what's your fee? And he said, $1,700. I said, I'll send you a check overnight. He called back the next day and said, would you let me off the hook? And of course we did. And but it was speakers like that kept the Falcon Club members interested and kept it going for a length of time. And then it began to, the basketball people didn't think the basketball team was getting enough of the slice of the Falcon Club money, and softball team, and so the splinter groups started forming, and I think it really hurt the Falcon Club, but it also helped the other club, the other teams, softball, baseball, junior high football, and all of those. So that was okay, and it was fine, and I guess it was time to fold and do those things. But the Gridiron Association was formed because the TSSAA would not let the Falcon Club, the booster clubs, pay assistant coaches a supplement. So we formed a group outside of the school system, Lincoln County Gridiron Association, and that produced the football program that was, I think, so nice. It started in '85, and it was, we carried it to Vanderbilt to show to the Vanderbilt Sports Information Department, and they took it to a national exhibit where all the sports information departments across the country were having their football programs graded, so to speak. And ours program at the time was rated higher than 10 other colleges, sports information directors that had their colleges there.
We've talked about this before, so you can tell me about, we're going to go back to the beginning and talk about the pit, the legendary football field here in Lincoln County. Talk about the building of the pit, how that came about, and how it became so iconic.
Ooh, that was another effort. The school was built, the gymnasium was built, but the school didn't have a football field. And a group of people, and I was not in that group at the beginning, but Mr. Carter and Mr. Ralph Hastings, who was school superintendent, I think at the time, and Ken Sokol at Amana several of them went to the school board and asked if they would help fund a new football stadium. And the school board said, no, if you want to build a stadium, you're on your own. So Mr. Carter, been in the construction business, looked over the site where the pit now is, and he envisioned a bowl being built there. And so he took a bulldozer down there one day and just started digging around. And then the next thing you know, this group was meeting again and walked out to the field, and there was dirt turning. So they got excitement rolling around Lincoln County, and I forget all the groups that were formed to raise money for it, but not until the final payment, and Billy Joe Evans had some ticket sales money that made the final, I think, $42,000 payment on the field. But other than that, the stadium was at one time when it was finished was appraised at somewhere around $700,000, but it was built for about $300,000. So it was all private money, no school funding at all in the building of the pit at the time. And I give Alvin Palmer credit. We were playing somebody, and Alvin's statement was, we'll bring them on to the pit. We'll show them a thing or two about football.
Let's talk about the 1982 year of winning the state championship, which after consolidation of the schools, this brought our community together.
There was a lot of speculation that merging the schools around the county would not work. Taking the basketball teams in each little district, Blanche, Fayetteville, Boones Hill, those places, thought it would just tear the community apart. But it's the best thing that ever happened to Lincoln County because it welded the community together. I'll take you back just a minute to the Clinic Bowl. We were in a meeting in the auditorium at the high school one day, and somebody asked Coach Meadows, said, what do you think about a new stadium for the high school? He said, get me a new stadium and I'll get you a state championship. I was sitting beside him. At the time, I never will forget him saying that. And true to his word, 82 championship. But that was, I think, we played at Vanderbilt before 27,000 people, and I think they turned the lights out in Fayetteville that night when everybody left town. But excuse me, back to your question.
The 1982 Clinic Bowl.
82 Clinic Bowl.
Which you're leading right into.
I forget who we were on the road every game in the playoffs, and it was Cumberland County that we played, and it was pouring down rain, muddy field, and I don't think we were favored to beat Cumberland County at their stadium. But when we won that game, and I think we played one more playoff game, but we kind of used Willie Nelson's On the Road Again as our theme that year because, like I say, every game was on the road. And then the final game at Clinic Bowl, Larry Taft called me one day and he said, I'd like to interview you for the article for the Clinic Bowl. And I said, Larry, I'm not very good at that, but he said, yes. Said, you remember Coach Jim Barron? I said, oh gosh, yes. He said, Jim was head coach at Gallatin High School for 9 years, and then he resigned and Calvin Short took over, and Jim became Calvin's offensive line coach. So Jim was at Gallatin when we were playing in the state championship against Gallatin, and Ruth Barron was there. Dan Herron, who had been principal here at Lincoln County High School, was at Gallatin as principal up there at the time. So Dan and Sue and Jim and Ruth were best of friends, and so Larry wanted to know about country boys coming to town. And I told Larry that we were going to put shin guards on all of our players, because when they unloaded from the bus, when they get to Nashville, I was scared they were going to run over a fire hydrant and injure their shins looking up at those skyscrapers up there. So I just said, you know, Larry, there's no way we can beat Gallatin with their premier program they've had over the years. And he said, I don't know that. I said, this is country versus city. Country boys come to town, and I just don't see us beating Gallatin. Well, he printed all that. And Lord, yeah. So I said, I don't want me. And, you know, I think it was fodder for the bulletin board at Gallatin. But anyway, I guess I might be taking credit for winning this Clinic Bowl, but that's not so, not at all. But it was, we had a lot of fun with it, and when Tim Johnson crossed that goal line, Tim threw the ball to official when he crossed the goal line, as he was probably supposed to do. Tim says, now, I wish I had kept that ball. But anyway, he threw it to official, and the official gave it to Charlie Warfield. Charlie was on the field representing the Nashville Junior Chamber of Commerce at the game, which the Nashville Junior Chamber of Commerce was sponsoring the Clinic Bowl that day, which I believe A, AA, and AAA teams were all playing at Nashville that day. And so Charlie kept the ball, and then when Tim became head coach at BGA, Alvin Palmer was there, and Charlie took the ball back to BGA one day and said, Alvin, here's the ball from the Clinic Bowl. Said, I want you to have it. And Tim turned around and said, sir, I'm not going to take this ball. I'm going to give it to Tim Johnson, who scored the winning touchdown. So the game football stayed in Charlie's hands for about 7 or 8 years before Tim got it back.
After Coach John Meadows and after the Clinic Bowl of '82 winning Lincoln County High School, Lincoln County went on to win 2 more state championships under Coach Lewis Thompson.
Right. Not many people remember the principal that was here when Lewis Thompson was hired. As a member of the Falcon Club, there were 3 or 4 of us that were members of the Falcon Club were invited to sit in on the interview with Coach Thompson by Neil Haynes. Neil was a principal at the time. He was here only 1 year. Neil came from Savannah, Tennessee, I think, as a principal over there. And he was also a football and basketball official in the state at the time. But anyway, we were in Neil's office, and Lewis was in there, and he and Alvin Palmer and 2 or 3 other of the coaches were out in the hallway on a chalkboard, and Lewis came in with his pants filthy and chalk dust all over him. And then, you know, Neil introduces him as who played for Bear Bryant at Alabama. Well, that opened our eyes quite a bit, and we wanted to know from Lewis, you know, how it was to play for the Bear. And it was yeah. So Lewis comes in, I believe his first year is '89, but that, how that came about, Lewis was working construction out of Lebanon, Tennessee, after he got out of college. I think he'd coached a little bit in Alabama in high schools, and came back and went to work for a construction company. And he ran into Ronnie Carter one day and Ronnie was the executive director of the TSSAA. And he ran into Ronnie at a quick stop there somewhere around Nashville. And Ronnie told him that the Unicoi County job was open, needing a high school coach. Well, Lewis didn't know where Unicoi County was and had to look it up, and finally went up there and got the job. I think he was the only interview for that job. But then Lewis ran into Coach Meadows somewhere, and I can't remember the details of that. But anyway, Coach Meadows said, "Would you be interested?" I told Lewis, "Would you be interested in Lincoln County?" And Lewis said, "Well, no." Said, "You're the coach at Lincoln County." He said, Coach Meadows said, "Well, this is my last year," and said it's going to be open. So Lewis applied, and I think there was a coach at Cleveland, Tennessee that had applied for the job. I'm not sure, but there was another coach that had applied for the job, and decided not to take it. So Lewis was second choice, and he said, "I never really looked back." Said, "Lincoln County is home. Peggy and I love it. We're here to stay." And he's been a good citizen, a good church member of ARP Church, and just a wonderful fellow.
Still here today, and a part of this group.
Right.
As we wrap up, Dick, let's tell everybody about your family.
Glad to. One of my things I really love to talk about, but the Mississippi State connection with my family. My son graduated from high school, and he had been down to Mississippi State to football games and with my wife and I, and so he took off to Mississippi State, and Jim became a student trainer there for baseball and football. And in the 1985 World Series, Will Clark, Raphael Paramore, and that bunch went to the College World Series in Omaha, and Jim got to go as student trainer, and enjoyed that trip, many memories. And also the baseball team played over in Hawaii at one point in time, and Jim got to go on that trip. So Jim has enjoyed Mississippi State. And then Beth followed suit 2 years later to Mississippi State, and she got involved in the things there as Jim did, and became a member of the Chi sorority, and was, at her senior year, voted Miss Mississippi State, which we were very proud. But anyway, both of our children, Jim married a Mississippi State girl from Jackson, Mississippi, and Beth married a Mississippi State boy from Clarksdale, Mississippi. So Jim has 2 daughters, and both of those girls graduated from Mississippi State, and his oldest daughter is married to a Mississippi State graduate from Cleveland, Mississippi, and Beth and the other daughter has not married. She's a physician's assistant in an emergency room at a hospital in Birmingham. And Beth had 2 boys, Will and John, who John is married. I threatened to disown John because he married an Ole Miss girl. And Will has not yet married. Both are doing very well. Mary Catherine lived in Cleveland, Mississippi, is working at a jewelry shop there and really enjoys it. Phyllis and Jim are doing well in Birmingham, and Harper is vice president of Southern Farms in Jackson, Mississippi, and is doing quite well. So Will is is a CPA. Passed his CPA exam first time and is working in Birmingham as a CPA. And John is in the insurance and bonding business in Birmingham. But all of them are doing well, and Martha and I couldn't be more blessed. Martha went to Peabody when she graduated from high school. Martha and I dated. We started in the first grade together and went all through high school together. Dated in high school off and on, and she went to Peabody. I went to State. We stayed connected, and week I graduated, a week after I graduated from Mississippi State, we married in 1962, and wouldn't take anything for our family.
Sounds good. Tell everybody how you would like to be remembered as we close down the video.
Don, I'd just like to be remembered maybe as somebody who helped those who couldn't help themselves along the way. And also I'd like to be remembered as someone who made things better for the young people that came along.
Dick Farrar, thank you.
Thank you, Don.